Her hand shot out and grabbed a stranger's wrist before her brain caught up with what she was doing. "Dance with me," Taylor said, not a question. The man turned. He didn't ask why. He didn't even blink. He just set his glass down on the nearest table and let her pull him onto the floor, right as Trevor Wright looked up from across the room and saw his ex-fiancée wrapped around a man he had never seen in his life. Taylor didn't know his name. She didn't care. All she knew was that Trevor's jaw had gone tight and Danielle's smile had gone stiff. And for the first time in 3 months, Taylor Grant felt something other than shame. She had no idea the man swaying with her, hand resting light on her waist like he'd done this 100 times, was about to become the new owner of the company that employed the man she was trying to hurt. She had no idea he was worth more money than she would make in 10 lifetimes. She just knew his cologne was expensive, and his eyes never left her face, even while half the room stared. My beautiful story lovers, welcome back to Afro Soul Love TV. If you're already enjoying the story, take a second to leave a comment and tell me what you think. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you want more stories like this. Your comments always make my day, and I read every one of them. Now, let's get back into it. 3 months earlier, Taylor had been folding a wedding dress back into its garment bag, with her hands shaking so bad she couldn't work the zipper. Trevor left her 19 days before their wedding. Not with a fight, not with tears. He sat her down at their kitchen table, the one they picked out together at a flea market in Charlotte, and told her he had grown in a different direction, and that Danielle from his office understood him in a way Taylor never had. 5 years. That's what she gave him. 5 years of holidays with his mother. 5 years of paying half the rent on an apartment she picked out. 5 years of telling anyone who asked that Trevor Wright was the one. She didn't cry in front of him. She waited until he left, until she heard his car pull out of the driveway, and then she sat on the kitchen floor and cried until her throat hurt. Her sister came the next morning and found dishes still in the sink from a dinner nobody ate. Her mother called every day for 2 weeks asking if the venue deposit was refundable, like that was the part that mattered. Taylor stopped answering half her calls. Erica Bell showed up on day 4 with a bottle of wine and a bag of takeout and didn't say a single word about Trevor. She just sat on the couch next to Taylor and let her stare at the wall for 2 hours before either of them spoke. "You don't have to talk," Erica said, "but you do have to eat something." That was the kind of friend Erica was. She didn't fix things with words. She just stayed. The weeks after that blurred together. Taylor went back to work at the marketing firm because she had bills, and she smiled at people in meetings because that's what you do. And every night she came home to an apartment that used to hold 2 people and now only echoed with 1. She heard about Danielle through mutual friends before Trevor ever confirmed it himself. Younger, worked in his department, the kind of woman who laughed at every joke he made, even the bad ones. Taylor used to laugh at his jokes too, back when she thought that was enough to build a life on. Then came the invitation. Not to Taylor directly, she wasn't invited, obviously, but Erica found out through a coworker that Trevor and Danielle were throwing an engagement party. 2 months. That's all it took him. 2 months to go from leaving Taylor at a kitchen table to putting a ring on someone else's finger. Erica told her over the phone, and Taylor didn't say anything for almost a full minute. "I want to go," Taylor finally said. "Absolutely not," Erica said. "Why would you do that to yourself?" "Because if I don't go, he wins twice. He gets the happy ending, and he gets to think I'm sitting home crying about it." Erica went quiet, the way she did when she was choosing her words carefully. "Taylor, nobody invited you. Then I'll be your +1. You work with half his department. You'll get an invite eventually. And when you do, I'm coming." It took 2 weeks, but Erica did get an invite. A work thing. Not personal, but an invite all the same. And true to her word, Taylor showed up on her arm in a dress she'd bought specifically for the occasion, lilac, the kind of dress that made people look twice. "You look like you're about to start a war," Erica said in the car outside the venue. "Maybe I am," Taylor said, and for the first time in months, there was something sharp in her voice instead of hollow. The venue was one of those glass-walled event spaces downtown, the kind Trevor always said he'd never be able to afford. Funny how fast things change when somebody else is footing the bill. Taylor found out later Danielle's family had money. That explained a few things. They walked in, and the first person Taylor saw was Trevor, laughing at something near the bar, his arm loose around Danielle's shoulders like it belonged there. Taylor's stomach dropped, but she kept walking. Breathe, Erica muttered under her breath. You don't owe him a reaction. Taylor grabbed a glass of champagne off a passing tray and drank half of it in one go. She told herself she'd stay an hour, long enough to be seen, long enough to prove a point, and then she'd leave with whatever dignity she had left intact. She lasted 20 minutes before Trevor noticed her. He didn't come over right away. He just looked, the way you look at something you didn't expect to see, something that made you feel caught. Then, he leaned down and said something to Danielle, who turned and looked too. Taylor's face burned. She grabbed another glass. Easy, Erica said, but Taylor wasn't listening anymore. She was watching Trevor watch her, and something ugly and familiar was rising up in her chest. The same feeling she used to get when he'd come home late and not explain where he'd been. The feeling of being small in a room that used to feel like it belonged to her too. She scanned the crowd, looking for anything, anyone, to make the feeling go away. That's when she saw him, standing near the exit, alone, dressed simpler than everyone else in the room, but somehow more put together than all of them combined. No drink in his hand at first, no one talking to him. Just watching the room the way someone watches a play they weren't sure they wanted tickets to. Taylor didn't think. She just walked. Up close, he was taller than she expected, with the kind of stillness that made people around him look restless by comparison. He watched her approach like he already knew what she was about to ask. I need a favor, Taylor said, breathless from the champagne and the walk and the anger she was trying to keep contained. Okay, he said. Just that. No hesitation, no question mark on his face. My ex is standing by the bar. I need him to see me having a better night than he is. The man tilted his head slightly, studying her like she was the most honest thing he'd encountered all evening. That's the whole ask? That's the whole ask! He set down the water glass he'd been holding. She noticed now it was water, not alcohol, and offered his hand. Then let's give him something to look at. That's how Taylor Grant ended up on a dance floor at her ex-fiancé's engagement party, hand in the hand of a stranger she'd never see coming. He was a good dancer, not showy, not trying to impress anyone, but sure of himself in a way that made it easy to follow his lead. His hand rested at her waist, light enough to be respectful, firm enough to guide her. He didn't try to make small talk. He didn't ask her name right away. He just moved with her, like he understood this wasn't about romance, it was about survival. Is it working? He asked after a minute, his voice low enough that only she could hear it. Taylor glanced past his shoulder. Trevor hadn't moved from the bar, but his whole body had gone rigid, and Danielle was saying something to him that he clearly wasn't listening to. It's working, Taylor said, and for the first time all night, she smiled for real. Good, the man said. Then let's keep it working. He spun her, slow and deliberate, and when she came back around, she caught Trevor's eye directly. He looked away first. That felt like the first real win she'd had in 3 months. You're better at this than you should be for someone who doesn't know why they're doing it, Taylor said. I know exactly why I'm doing it, he said. You needed a partner and you asked. Not a lot of people ask for what they need directly. I respect that. Most people would have said no. Most people aren't paying attention to what's actually happening in a room, he said, and something in the way he said it made Taylor look at him more closely. Not the suit, not the face, though both were doing fine on their own. Something underneath it, like he was somewhere else half the time, watching everything with a kind of distance she recognized because she used to have it too, before Trevor. I'm Taylor, she said. Jun, he said. Just the one word. No last name offered, and something told her not to ask. The song ended, and for a moment neither of them moved to step apart. Across the room, Erica was watching with her mouth slightly open, like she couldn't believe what she'd just witnessed. Thank you, Taylor said. I mean it. You don't have to thank me for dancing, Jun said. But you're welcome anyway. He looked like he might say something else, but then his gaze flicked toward the door, toward 2 men in dark suits who just walked in and were scanning the room like they were looking for someone specific. Jun's jaw tightened, just slightly, the first crack in the calm he'd carried all night. I have to go, he said. Of course, Taylor said, stepping back, suddenly aware again of how strange this whole moment had been. He held her gaze for one more second. It was worth it. Watching his face. Then he was gone, weaving through the crowd toward the 2 men, and Taylor lost sight of him before she could even process what had just happened. Erica appeared at her side within seconds, gripping her arm. "Who was that?" "I don't know," Taylor said. "His name is June. That's all I got." "Taylor, do you understand what just happened?" Trevor looked like he was about to throw up. Taylor allowed herself a small, satisfied laugh. The first real laugh in what felt like forever. Good, but the satisfaction didn't last as long as she wanted it to. Within 10 minutes, Trevor found a way to corner her near the coat check. Danielle nowhere in sight. "Really, Taylor? You couldn't just stay home?" "I was invited," she lied smoothly, nodding toward Erica across the room. "You made a scene." "I danced." "That's not a scene, Trevor." His face twisted with something between anger and hurt, and for a second, Taylor almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "Who was that guy?" Trevor asked, and there was something underneath the question that Taylor couldn't quite place. Not jealousy exactly, something closer to worry. "None of your business," Taylor said, and walked away before he could respond. In the car on the way home, Erica kept glancing over at her like she was checking to make sure Taylor was actually okay and not just performing okay for an audience. "You did good tonight," Erica said. "I feel kind of sick, actually," Taylor admitted, the champagne and the adrenaline finally wearing off in equal measure. "Is that normal?" "Probably. You just faced the man who left you at a kitchen table 19 days before your wedding. You're allowed to feel sick." Taylor stared out the window at the city lights blurring past. "Do you think I'll ever stop thinking about it? The wedding that didn't happen?" Erica didn't answer right away. "I think you'll think about it less and less, and one day you'll realize you haven't thought about it in weeks, and that'll be the day you know you're actually healing." Taylor wanted to believe her. She wasn't sure she did yet. She thought about June on and off over the next few days, in the strange way you think about a stranger who did something kind for you without asking for anything back. She wondered who those men in suits were, why he'd left so fast, whether he even lived in the same city or had just been passing through for one night. She figured she'd never know, and there was something almost freeing in that. A moment that meant something, and then was simply over. No strings, no expectations. She had no idea that across town, in a downtown office building where Trevor Wright worked, an email was already circulating among senior staff, informing everyone that the company had just finalized an acquisition. New ownership, new leadership. A name at the top of the memo that made Trevor's stomach drop the moment he read it Monday morning. Jun. Trevor read the name 3 times before it fully landed. The email came in at 8:47 that Monday morning. Subject line, urgent, all staff meeting, 10 a.m., main conference room. He almost deleted it without reading past the subject line, the way he usually did with company-wide meeting notices. But something made him open it. Maybe instinct. Maybe the specific weight the word urgent carried that morning. The email explained that the firm had completed its acquisition by a private holding company and that the new principal owner would be addressing staff directly. A photo was attached, low resolution, clearly pulled from some old business registry filing because the man rarely appeared in public. But Trevor recognized him instantly. The same face he'd watched dance with his ex-fiancée 2 nights before, hand resting on her waist like he owned the room. Trevor's coffee went cold in his hand. He read the name below the photo. Jun-Ho Han, founder and majority shareholder of a holding group that had quietly bought controlling stakes in a dozen companies across 3 continents, always through subsidiaries, always avoiding his name in headlines. By 9:30, half the office had heard the rumor, and by 9:45, the conference room was packed shoulder to shoulder, 40 employees squeezed into a space meant for 20, all of them speculating about layoffs, restructuring, what a hostile-sounding acquisition might mean for their jobs. Trevor sat near the back, his leg bouncing under the table, sweat gathering at the back of his neck despite the air conditioning. At exactly 10 o'clock, the door opened, and June walked in. He looked nothing like he had at the party. Same calm posture, same unreadable eyes, but now surrounded by 2 assistants carrying tablets, moving with the kind of quiet authority that made the entire room straighten in their seats without being told to. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. He introduced himself briefly, explained the terms of the acquisition in clear, direct language, assured everyone their jobs were secure for now, pending a 90-day evaluation period, and opened the floor for questions. Trevor barely heard any of it. He was too busy watching June's face, waiting for some flicker of recognition, some sign that this man remembered exactly who he'd danced with 2 nights earlier and whose ex-fiancée she happened to be. June's eyes passed over Trevor once, briefly, without any visible reaction, and moved on. After the meeting, as people filtered out in tight, nervous clusters, Trevor found himself lingering near the door, and June's assistant approached him directly. "Mr. Wright?" Trevor's stomach clenched. "Yes?" "Mr. Han would like a word before you head out." Trevor followed her to a small side office that had been hastily converted into a temporary workspace, boxes of files still stacked against one wall. June sat behind the desk, unbothered, like he'd worked in that room his entire life. "Close the door," June said, not looking up from the tablet in front of him. Trevor did, his hands unsteady. "You work in client accounts," June said, not a question. "Yes, sir. I read your file this morning, solid numbers. Nothing remarkable, nothing concerning." Trevor didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. June finally looked up. "I imagine you recognized me." "Yes," Trevor said, his voice tighter than he wanted it to be. "From Saturday." "Good. I appreciate honesty, and I especially appreciate people who don't waste my time pretending not to know something we both already know." June leaned back slightly. "The woman I danced with, Taylor, she's connected to you how?" Trevor's jaw tightened. "She's my ex-fiancé." Something shifted in June's expression, subtle but unmistakable, like a piece of information sliding into place. "Interesting. Is that going to be a problem?" Trevor asked, hating how small his voice sounded. "Why would it be a problem?" June said. "You left her. That's not my business. What is my business is this company, and whether you're good at your job. Are you good at your job, Mr. Wright?" "Yes, sir." "Then we won't have any further reason to discuss your personal life." June turned back to his tablet, a clear dismissal. "You can go." Trevor left the office with his heart hammering, but not entirely from fear. Somewhere underneath the panic was something colder, more calculating, a thought he couldn't quite shake. If this man had gone out of his way to ask about Taylor by name, remembered her specifically among everyone in that room on Saturday night, that meant something. And things that meant something to powerful men could sometimes be turned into leverage, if you were smart enough to wait for the right moment. He didn't call Taylor that day. He told himself it was because it would look suspicious. Really, he wasn't sure what he'd even say. Taylor, meanwhile, had no idea any of this was unfolding. She spent her Monday the way she spent most Mondays, buried in campaign reports at the marketing firm, grabbing a mediocre salad at her desk, texting Erica memes between meetings. It wasn't until Wednesday that June found his way back into her life, and it happened in the most ordinary way possible. She was standing in line at the coffee shop 2 blocks from her office, the one she went to almost every morning because they made the only oat milk latte in the neighborhood that didn't taste burnt. She was scrolling through emails on her phone, half paying attention, when she heard a voice behind her that made her look up immediately. Small world. June stood there, dressed down from the suit she remembered, in a simple gray sweater that somehow still looked expensive without trying. He looked genuinely pleased to see her, in a quiet way that didn't need to announce itself. "You're kidding me," Taylor said, a smile breaking across her face before she could stop it. "What are the odds?" "Statistically low," June said, "but not impossible. I've been in meetings near here all week." "Right," Taylor said, not thinking anything of it. Why would she? She had no reason to connect a stranger from a party to a company acquisition 3 neighborhoods away. "How's the ex situation?" June asked, an easy teasing note in his voice that surprised her. "Recovering," Taylor said. "Emotionally and financially. That dress cost more than I want to admit. Worth it, though." "Completely worth it," Taylor agreed, and they both laughed, easy and unguarded in a way that felt strange given they'd met exactly once, for exactly one song. The line moved forward. June ordered black coffee, nothing else, and when Taylor's card declined on the first swipe due to some banking app glitch, he quietly paid for both their drinks before she could protest, brushing off her attempt to pay him back with a simple, "Next time you can get mine." "Is there going to be a next time?" Taylor asked, surprising herself with how forward it sounded. June considered the question seriously, like it deserved real thought rather than a throwaway answer. "I hope so," he said. "You're the most honest person I've talked to in longer than I'd like to admit." Taylor didn't know what to say to that, so she just smiled and took her coffee, and they exchanged numbers before parting ways on the sidewalk outside, June heading one direction, Taylor another. both of them glancing back once before rounding their separate corners. She had no idea she'd just exchanged numbers with the man who now controlled her ex-fiancé's paycheck. Over the next 2 weeks, June became a quiet, steady presence in Taylor's life, showing up in small doses that never felt like too much. A text on Tuesday asking if she'd tried the new ramen place downtown. A coffee run on Thursday that turned into 45 minutes of conversation neither of them planned for. A Saturday afternoon where he showed up unannounced at Erica's bakery, claiming he'd heard it had the best sourdough in the city. Though Taylor suspected he'd asked Erica directly for the address after their first encounter. Erica, for her part, was suspicious in the way only a best friend could be. "Who is this man, really?" Erica asked one evening, watching June's name light up Taylor's phone screen for the third time that hour. "He's too calm, too put together. Men like that either have something to hide or someone else pulling their strings." "Maybe he's just a good person," Taylor said, though even she could admit there was something unplaceable about him, a quality that made her curious rather than cautious. "Nobody's just anything, Taylor, especially not men who dress like that and pay for coffee without blinking." Taylor waved her off, but the comment stuck with her longer than she wanted it to. She learned small things about him over their conversations, though he was careful, deliberate almost, about what he shared. He told her he worked in business consulting, technically true, technically the smallest possible version of the truth. He told her he traveled often for work, which explained the days he'd disappear without warning and reappear a week later like nothing happened. He never mentioned a last name beyond Han, never mentioned a company, never mentioned money in any way that would have tipped her off. What he did share, slowly, carefully, was more personal. He told her about growing up the only son in a family that measured love and achievement, about a father who never once said he was proud of him no matter how large the numbers on his balance sheets grew. He told her about the loneliness of being surrounded by people who wanted something from him, how difficult it had become to tell the difference between someone who liked him and someone who liked what he could offer them. "You don't seem like that," he told her one night, sitting across from her at a quiet noodle shop she picked, because it was cheap and unpretentious. "You didn't know anything about me when you asked me to dance. You just needed a partner for one song." "I still don't know much about you," Taylor admitted. "You're kind of a mystery. Good mystery or bad mystery?" "Undecided," Taylor said, smiling. "Ask me again in a month." He reached across the table and took her hand, briefly, gently, testing the water. Taylor didn't pull away. "I like you, Taylor," he said, simple and direct in a way Trevor had never managed to be, even after 5 years together. "I don't say that easily." "I like you too," Taylor said, and meant it, surprising herself with how true it felt. She thought about Trevor less and less during those weeks. Erica had been right. Healing didn't come with a dramatic finish line. It came quietly, in the space between one thought about him and the next, growing wider and wider until one day you realized weeks had passed without his name crossing your mind at all. Meanwhile, Trevor's 90-day evaluation period at work had become a slow, grinding source of anxiety. June rarely appeared in the office in person, running most operations remotely or through his assistants. But when he did show up, Trevor felt his presence like a held breath, waiting to see if today would be the day he lost his job, for reasons that had nothing to do with his performance, and everything to do with the dance floor. It didn't help that Danielle had started asking questions. "Why does the new owner make you so nervous?" she asked one night, watching Trevor pour a second glass of wine before dinner was even on the table. "He doesn't make me nervous," Trevor lied. "Corporate acquisitions are just stressful. You've been weird since that meeting." Did something happen? Trevor considered telling her the truth, that the man who now controlled his career was the same stranger Taylor had danced with at their engagement party, but something stopped him. Maybe pride. Maybe the fear that saying it out loud would make it more real than he could handle. "It's nothing," he said, "just work stuff." Danielle let it go, but the tension between them had already started to shift, small cracks forming in a foundation that had never been particularly solid to begin with. It was during the third week of June's evaluation period that Trevor finally saw an opening. He was in the break room refilling his coffee when he overheard two coworkers discussing an upcoming leadership retreat, a weekend event where senior staff would present quarterly projections directly to June and his executive team. Attendance was limited, hand-selected by department heads, and Trevor's name wasn't on the initial list. He spent the next 2 days making himself indispensable in every meeting he could insert himself into, staying late, volunteering for projects nobody else wanted, doing everything in his power to get noticed for reasons that had nothing to do with the real leverage he was hoping to eventually use. By Friday, his manager mentioned, almost as an afterthought, that Trevor had been added to the retreat list after all. Trevor smiled and thanked her, but underneath the relief was something colder and more deliberate, a plan forming that he hadn't fully admitted to himself yet. If Taylor was close to June now, close enough to matter to him personally, that closeness was worth something. Trevor just needed to figure out how to use it without looking like he was using it at all. He started with something small. A text to Taylor, out of nowhere, something casual enough not to raise alarms. "Hey, been thinking about you. Hope you're doing well." Taylor stared at the message for a long moment before showing it to Erica. "Absolutely not," Erica said immediately. "Do not respond to that." "I wasn't going to," Taylor said, though something about the message unsettled her more than she expected. Trevor never reached out first unless he wanted something. 5 years had taught her that much. She didn't respond. But 3 days later, another text came, this one more direct. "Can we talk? It's important." This time, Taylor felt a flicker of unease that had nothing to do with lingering feelings for Trevor and everything to do with instinct. Something was off. She just couldn't name it yet. She mentioned it to June during dinner that Friday, almost as a passing comment, not expecting it to matter. "My ex has been texting me," she said, twirling noodles around her chopsticks. "Says he wants to talk. It's weird. We haven't spoken since the party." June's expression didn't change much, but Taylor noticed the slight pause before he responded, the careful way he set down his own chopsticks. "Do you want to talk to him?" June asked. "No," Taylor said honestly, "but I have a bad feeling I'm going to have to eventually." She had no idea how right she was. Trevor's third text arrived on a Tuesday morning. This one longer than the others, more desperate in tone. "I know who he is, Taylor. I know June is your new boyfriend, and I know he's the guy who bought my company. We need to talk. This isn't about us anymore. It's bigger than that." Taylor read the message 3 times on her walk to work, her stomach twisting with each pass. She stopped on the sidewalk, ignoring the people flowing around her, and called Erica immediately. "He knows," Taylor said the second Erica picked up. "Trevor knows Jun bought his company. How does he even know that?" "Wait, slow down. June bought Trevor's company?" Taylor realized with a sick jolt that she'd never actually told Erica the name of Trevor's employer, never made the connection out loud even to herself. She'd been so wrapped up in the newness of June, so careful not to let Trevor's shadow touch this new thing, that she hadn't stopped to ask basic questions about what June actually did for a living. "I don't know what's happening," Taylor admitted, her voice shaking slightly. "I need to talk to June." She called him from a bench outside her office building, hands trembling as she waited for him to pick up. "Taylor," June answered, warmth in his voice that made the coming conversation feel even harder. "Everything okay?" "Trevor says you bought his company," Taylor said, skipping any preamble. "Is that true?" There was a pause on the line, longer than Taylor wanted, long enough to confirm the answer before he even said it. "Yes," June said quietly. "It's true." Taylor closed her eyes, feeling the ground shift beneath a relationship she'd thought was simple and honest. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked. "I was going to. I wanted to find the right time, and every time felt wrong. Because I didn't want you to think." "Think what, June? That you're using me somehow?" "Because right now, that's exactly what it looks like." "That's not what this is," June said, his voice firm but not defensive. "I didn't seek you out because of Trevor. I didn't even know who you were connected to until after that party, when his name showed up on an employee roster, and I put it together. But you knew. For weeks now you've known, and you let me keep talking about my ex like it was nothing, like you had no stake in any of it." "Taylor, please, can we talk about this in person?" "I need some time," Taylor said, and hung up before he could respond, her hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped the phone. That evening, Trevor showed up at her apartment unannounced, something he hadn't done since before their breakup. Taylor almost didn't open the door, but curiosity, or maybe the need for answers, won out. "You can't just show up here," she said, blocking the doorway with her body. I need 5 minutes, Trevor said, and something in his expression, some genuine urgency underneath the calculation she couldn't quite see yet, made her step aside. He sat on the same couch he used to sit on when they lived together, and for a moment it felt disorienting, like time had folded back on itself. How long have you known who he is? Taylor asked, arms crossed, keeping distance between them. Since the day after the party. There was an all-staff email. His photo was attached. And you didn't think to tell me? For weeks, Trevor? I didn't know how, Trevor said, and for once, he sounded almost sincere. I didn't know if telling you would blow up your relationship or make things worse for me at work. I was scared, Taylor. Scared of what? Trevor hesitated, and in that hesitation, Taylor saw the calculation return to his eyes, the thing she'd learned to recognize after 5 years of watching him navigate difficult conversations with half-truths. He asked about you specifically, Trevor said. The day of the acquisition meeting, he pulled me into his office and asked how I knew you. I don't know what that means for me, Taylor, but I know it means something. A man like that doesn't ask personal questions for no reason. What are you trying to say? I'm saying you have influence you don't even realize you have, and I could really use your help right now. There's a retreat coming up, a chance for me to present directly to him and the executive team. If you could just put in a good word, tell him I'm someone worth keeping around. Taylor felt something cold settle in her chest, the pieces clicking into place with sickening clarity. You're not here because you're scared for me, she said slowly. You're here because you want me to help you keep your job. That's not all of it. Get out, Trevor. Taylor, please, just hear me out. Get out, she repeated, louder this time, her voice cracking with an anger that had been building for months, maybe years, finally finding somewhere to go. You left me 19 days before our wedding, and now you show up here asking me to use my relationship as a favor for your career? Do you hear yourself? Trevor stood, his face flushing red, caught between shame and frustration. I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did. You meant exactly that. Get out of my apartment. He left without another word, and Taylor locked the door behind him, sliding down against it until she was sitting on the floor, the same way she'd sat on her kitchen floor the night he first left her. Her phone buzzed. June, I know this is a lot right now. I'm not going anywhere. Whenever you're ready to talk, I'll be here. Taylor stared at the message for a long time before setting the phone face down beside her, not ready yet to answer either man in her life, needing space to figure out which parts of her anger belonged to Trevor's manipulation and which parts belonged to June's silence. She didn't sleep much that night. By morning, she'd made a decision, though not the one either man was expecting. Taylor called June the next morning, her voice steadier than she expected after a sleepless night of turning the situation over in her mind. Can we talk? She asked. In person. Of course. Anywhere you want. She chose a park near her apartment, neutral ground, somewhere that didn't carry the weight of either their early dates or Trevor's old apartment. June arrived first, sitting on a bench with his hands folded, none of his usual composure fully intact. I owe you an explanation, he said before she'd even sat down. You owe me the truth, Taylor corrected, settling onto the bench with enough space between them to make her boundaries clear. All of it. Not the version that makes you look best. June nodded slowly. The night we met, I wasn't at that party by accident. I was there because my team was quietly assessing the company before the acquisition finalized, gathering information about culture, leadership, things numbers on a page don't tell you. I wasn't supposed to interact with anyone. I was supposed to observe. And then I asked you to dance. And then you asked me to dance, June said, something softening in his voice at the memory. And it was the first honest interaction I'd had with anyone in longer than I want to admit. You didn't want anything from me except a witness to your anger. That was refreshing in a way I can't fully explain. When did you find out about Trevor? Really? The Monday after, during the all-staff meeting. I saw his name on the employee roster, and something about it nagged at me. I called him into my office and asked directly. He confirmed it. And you didn't think that was information I deserved to have. I was afraid, June admitted, and the admission seemed to cost him something. Like the words didn't come easily to a man used to controlling every outcome around him. I was afraid that if you knew, you'd assume the connection was the reason I kept pursuing you. I was afraid you'd think I was using you somehow, or worse, that you'd feel obligated to stop seeing me to protect your professional distance from my company. So instead, you just let me find out from Trevor, in the worst possible way. That wasn't my plan, Taylor. I was going to tell you. I kept waiting for a moment that felt right, and I understand now that there was never going to be a right moment, because the longer I waited, the worse the eventual reveal would feel. Taylor sat with that for a long moment, watching a group of kids play across the park, their laughter carrying easily through the morning air. He wants me to help him keep his job, she said eventually. He came to my apartment last night and basically asked me to vouch for him with you. June's jaw tightened. The first real flash of anger she'd seen from him. That's not something you need to concern yourself with. His employment status has nothing to do with you. That's not really the point, June. The point is, I'm caught in the middle of something I never asked to be part of. My ex is trying to use me for leverage, and my boyfriend turned out to be the person he needs leverage over, and I found out about all of it in the worst way possible. You're right, June said quietly. I should have told you the day I found out. I let my own fear get in the way of something you deserved from the start, which is honesty. I'm sorry. Taylor studied his face, searching for any sign of the calculation she'd seen in Trevor's eyes the night before. Any hint that his apology was strategic rather than genuine. She didn't find it. What she found instead was something closer to fear, the fear of a man who'd spent his whole life being wanted for what he had rather than who he was, terrified of losing the one person who'd never once asked him for anything. I need you to promise me something, Taylor said. Anything. No more secrets, even the uncomfortable ones, especially the uncomfortable ones. I promise, Jun said, and reached for her hand, waiting this time for her to close the distance rather than assuming she would. Taylor took his hand. What are you going to do about Trevor? She asked. Nothing different than I would have done anyway. His job depends on his performance, not on his connection to you, and not on anything he tries to leverage. If anything, this makes me trust him less. He's going to that retreat. I know. I approved the list weeks ago. I'm not going to punish him for trying to survive a stressful acquisition, even if the way he went about it with you was wrong. But I'm also not going to let him think it worked. Taylor felt something ease in her chest, a tension she hadn't realized she was carrying until it started to loosen. This was different from Trevor. Whatever this was with June, it wasn't built on convenience or performance. It was built on something steadier, even if it had taken a painful detour to prove it. But the peace didn't last long. 3 days later, Danielle showed up at Taylor's office unannounced, her face pale, her hands wrapped tightly around the strap of her purse. I need to talk to you, Danielle said, standing awkwardly near the reception desk, while Taylor's co-workers glanced over with obvious curiosity. It's about Trevor. Taylor led her to an empty conference room, uncertain what to expect. He's been lying to me, Danielle said the moment the door closed, her voice cracking. About everything. The retreat, his job, what he's been doing at night. I found messages on his phone. He's been talking to someone in HR about internal complaint procedures, trying to build some kind of case that he's being unfairly targeted by the new ownership because of a personal conflict. He's planning to say June has a conflict of interest because of you, that his evaluation isn't fair because his new boss is dating his ex. Taylor felt the floor tilt slightly beneath her. He's trying to make this into a legal issue? He's trying to make it into leverage, Danielle said. If he can't get ahead by using your relationship quietly, he's going to try to use it as a weapon publicly, claim bias, maybe even try to get some kind of settlement if they let him go. I overheard him talking about it with a lawyer friend. Taylor sat back heavily in her chair, the full scope of Trevor's desperation finally coming into focus. This wasn't just about a promotion anymore. This was about protecting himself at any cost, and he was willing to drag her name and June's reputation through it to do it. Why are you telling me this? Taylor asked. You're engaged to him. Danielle's face crumpled slightly. I don't think I am anymore. Not after this. I came here because whatever's happening between the two of you, you deserve to know what he's planning before he does something you can't undo. Taylor thanked Danielle, feeling an odd, complicated sympathy for a woman she'd once resented without ever really knowing her. Danielle left looking smaller than when she'd arrived, like a weight had settled onto her shoulders the moment she'd said the words out loud. Taylor called June immediately. He's planning to file some kind of complaint, she said, pacing the length of the conference room, claiming conflict of interest, bias, maybe even trying to set up grounds for a settlement if his evaluation doesn't go his way. June was quiet for a moment on the other end of the line. That's a serious accusation to make against a company, If he goes public with it, even informally, it could create real problems. Not for me personally, but for the acquisition, for the board, for confidence in the leadership transition. I'm sorry, Taylor said, guilt creeping into her voice even though she'd done nothing wrong. This is because of me. Because of us. No, June said firmly. This is because of him. You didn't ask him to leave you at a kitchen table, and you didn't ask him to use our relationship as a weapon when his career felt threatened. This is entirely his choice, and it says everything about his character, nothing about yours. What are you going to do? I'm going to handle it the way I handle everything, directly and with documentation. My legal team will need to speak with you at some point to get your account of events, purely to protect the integrity of the acquisition process. Is that something you're comfortable with? Yes, Taylor said without hesitation. Whatever you need. The retreat took place that weekend, a 2-day event at a corporate resort outside the city where senior staff presented quarterly projections to the executive team. Taylor wasn't there, of course, but June called her that Saturday evening, his voice carrying a note of something she couldn't quite place. Trevor presented today, June said. His numbers were fine, not exceptional, but fine. Afterward, he asked to speak with me privately. And? He tried to bring up your relationship directly this time, framing it as a concern about fairness in his evaluation process, suggesting that if I wanted to avoid the appearance of impropriety, it might be easier for both of us if I found him a role with more autonomy, less direct oversight from me. He asked for a promotion, using me as the excuse. Essentially, yes. What did you say? I told him that if he genuinely believed there was a conflict of interest, the appropriate action would have been to raise it through official HR channels the moment he suspected it, not to save it as leverage for months, and deploy it only when his own performance came into question. I told him that the fact he chose the second option told me everything I needed to know about his judgment, and that judgment is exactly what I evaluate leadership potential on. So you didn't give him what he wanted? No. I told him his position remains under standard evaluation like everyone else's, and that if he pursues a formal complaint, the company will cooperate fully and transparently, because we have nothing to hide. I also mentioned that attempting to manufacture leverage using someone else's personal relationship, someone who never consented to being used that way, reflects poorly on him regardless of how any formal complaint might resolve. Taylor let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. How did he react? Not well, but that's not my concern. My concern was making sure you were protected from being dragged into something you had no part in creating. Taylor felt something warm settle in her chest, gratitude mixed with something deeper, something that felt dangerously close to the kind of love she'd once thought she'd found with Trevor, except this time it didn't come with the constant low hum of uncertainty she'd lived with for 5 years. Thank you, she said, for handling it the way you did, for not letting him win. I didn't do it to win anything, June said. I did it because it was right, and because you matter to me more than any single employee's career ambitions. Monday morning, Taylor's phone rang before she'd even finished her coffee. Trevor's name lit up the screen. She almost let it go to voicemail, but something made her answer, some need for closure she hadn't fully acknowledged until that moment. What do you want, Trevor? I need you to talk to him, Trevor said immediately, his voice tight and desperate in a way she'd never heard from him before. Not even during their worst fights. Taylor, please. I could lose everything. This job, my reputation, everything I've built. You should have thought about that before you tried to use me as a bargaining chip. I was scared. People do stupid things when they're scared. I know, Taylor said, and something in her voice must have carried more finality than Trevor expected, because his breathing hitched audibly on the other end of the line. I was scared too, Trevor. When you left me 19 days before our wedding, I was terrified, and you didn't call me the next day begging for help. You just disappeared into a new relationship like I never existed. That's not fair. None of this is about fair, Taylor said. It's about consequences. You made choices, and now you're facing what comes after them, the same way I had to face what came after you left. I'm not going to protect you from that, Trevor. Not after everything. So that's it? You're just going to let me lose my job because of some stranger you met at a party? Taylor felt the old anger rise up, sharp and clarifying. He's not a stranger anymore, Trevor, and you didn't lose your job because of him. You're at risk of losing your job because of choices you made. Choices that had nothing to do with me, until you decided to drag me into them." She hung up before he could respond, her hands steady in a way they hadn't been during any of their previous conversations. For the first time since the breakup, she felt like she was standing on solid ground, no longer defined by what Trevor had done to her or what he was now trying to do because of her. But the story wasn't over yet, and later that same afternoon, an email arrived in Taylor's inbox from an address she didn't recognize. Subject line blank, the message inside short and unsettling. "You should know what he's really planning before it's too late for both of you." There was no signature, no further explanation. Just a single attachment, a document Taylor's cursor hovered over for a long moment before she finally clicked it open. The document was a draft complaint, formatted like something a lawyer would prepare, dated 3 days earlier, listing Trevor Wright as the complainant and naming both Jun and the acquisition itself as subjects of alleged workplace impropriety. But it wasn't the complaint that made Taylor's stomach drop, it was the second page, a personal message clearly meant for someone else, accidentally left attached to the same file. "If this doesn't get me what I need, we go to the press instead." A billionaire dating an employee's ex-fiancé, using company resources to protect her interests, will make headlines regardless of whether it's technically illegal. Sometimes public pressure works faster than lawsuits. Taylor read it twice, her hands trembling, before calling June immediately. "He's planning to go to the press," she said, the second he picked up, no greeting, no preamble. "I got an email, anonymous, with a draft of his complaint attached, and there's a second page, some kind of note to someone else, saying if legal action doesn't work, he'll leak the story to reporters." "Forward it to me right now," June said, his voice sharp in a way she'd never heard before. All the calm control, replaced by something focused and urgent. She forwarded the email immediately, and within minutes June called back. "This is enough to move forward with termination for cause," he said. "Attempting to leverage a personal relationship for professional gain is one thing. Threatening to manufacture a media narrative to extort favorable treatment is another entirely. My legal team has been documenting every step of this since the retreat. This just gives them everything they need. What happens now? Now I make sure this ends the right way. Legally, cleanly, without giving him any further ammunition to use against either of us." Taylor felt a strange mix of relief and unease settle over her. Relief that the truth was finally surfacing in a way that couldn't be twisted or denied. Unease at how close Trevor had come to actually going through with something that could have hurt June's business and dragged her name through headlines she never asked to be part of. "Who do you think sent the email?" she asked. "I don't know," June admitted, "but whoever it was clearly wanted this stopped before it went any further. That matters more right now than figuring out who." 2 days later, Trevor was let go from the company, officially for cause related to attempted misuse of confidential information and violation of company conduct policies. Though the specifics were kept quiet, handled with the kind of discretion that protected everyone involved from unnecessary public exposure. He didn't call Taylor again, he didn't text. The silence, after months of noise, felt like its own kind of relief. Danielle reached out one final time, a short message thanking Taylor for handling things with more grace than Trevor deserved, confirming that the engagement was officially over, that she'd moved out of the apartment they shared just that week. Taylor didn't feel triumphant reading it. She felt something quieter, something like closure finally settling into place after months of turbulence. That Friday evening, June asked her to a dinner he described only as important, refusing to give her any further details despite her repeated attempts to pry information out of him over the phone. She dressed carefully, choosing the same deep green dress she'd worn the night they first met. Though she didn't tell him that, curious whether he'd notice. He noticed immediately when she arrived, something soft crossing his face, as she stepped out of the car in front of a restaurant she didn't recognize. Small and elegant, nothing like the corporate venues she'd expect a man of his position to frequent. "You remembered," he said, taking her hand. "I thought it felt right," Taylor said, coming full circle. They were seated at a private table near a window overlooking the city, and June was quieter than usual. Through most of the meal, something clearly weighing on his mind that Taylor couldn't quite place. "Everything okay?" she finally asked, halfway through dessert. "I've been thinking about something for a while now," June said, setting down his fork, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her breath catch slightly. "About honesty. About what it means to build something real with someone, after everything we've both been through, with people who wanted things from us instead of wanting us. June, let me finish, he said gently. I've spent most of my life surrounded by people who saw me as an opportunity rather than a person. You never did that, not once, from the very first night we met. You asked me to dance because you needed something honest in a room full of performance. And somehow that honesty became the realest thing I've ever had with another person. He reached into his jacket pocket, and Taylor's heart began pounding before she even fully understood what was happening. I know this might feel fast to some people, June continued, given everything with Trevor, given how recently your entire world fell apart, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life than I am about this. He opened a small box, and inside sat a ring, simple, elegant, nothing like the flashy jewelry Taylor might have expected from a man of his wealth. Exactly the kind of thing she would have chosen for herself if she'd ever let herself imagine this moment again after Trevor. Taylor Grant, June said, I'm not asking you to marry me tonight. I'm asking you to let me spend the time it takes to earn that question properly, without secrets, without anyone else's leverage standing between us. Will you let me do that? Taylor felt tears gathering, not from sadness this time, but from something that had been missing for so long she'd almost forgotten what it felt like. Being chosen, fully and honestly, by someone who wanted nothing from her except her. Yes, she said, her voice breaking slightly. Yes, I'll let you. He slid the ring onto her right hand instead of her left. A promise rather than a proposal. And something about that small distinction felt more meaningful than any grand gesture could have. Later that night, as they walked along the waterfront after dinner, Taylor's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, the same number that had emailed her the anonymous document days earlier. I hope you're happy now. You deserve better than both of them ever gave you. Take care of yourself, Taylor. Taylor stared at the message, a chill running through her despite the warm evening air. What is it? June asked, noticing her expression change. I think I might know who sent that email, she said slowly. But I have no idea how they knew any of this, or why they were watching so closely. June took the phone from her hand, reading the message twice, his expression darkening in a way Taylor had never seen before. That number, he said quietly. I recognize the area code. It's registered to someone on my own executive team. Taylor felt her stomach drop as June's eyes lifted slowly to meet hers, the calm control in his face replaced by something sharper, more alert, like a man who just realized the story he thought was ending was only just beginning. Someone close to me has been watching this entire time, he said, and I don't know yet whether that means we have an ally or something far more dangerous standing closer to us than either of us ever imagined. My beautiful story lovers, drop your theories in the comments below. I read every single one. If this story had you glued to the screen, do me a favor and hit that like button, subscribe if you're new here, and tell someone who loves a good love story to come join us at Afro Soul Love TV.